and welcome to Bird News and Views. I'm your host, Don Burgess. And with us tonight is the Deputy Director of the Bermuda Weather Service, Michelle Pitcher. Welcome, Michelle.
Hello, Don. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you, especially on a beautiful sunny day like today when we're not too worried about hurricanes hitting us. Yeah. So, Michelle, the report just recently came out with regard to how many storms they're predicting. So, what is NOAA forecasting for the hurricane season that we know about?
So with the latest predictions from NOAA, we are expecting an above average season again this year. That's going to make it the 7th consecutive above average season. So nothing's been calming down these past several summers. We're going to have 14 to 21 named storms. The average is 14. 6 to 10 of those are expected to become hurricanes, where normally the average of that is 7. And then out of those 6 to 10 hurricanes, 3 to 6 are expected to be major hurricanes, where usually the average is 3. Now, just as a reminder, a major hurricane is a Category 3 hurricane or above, and a Category 3 hurricane starts at 96 knots of sustained winds. Some of the reasons for NOAA's predictions is that we have an ongoing La Nina, and it's likely to persist throughout the season. We also have some warmer than average sea surface temperatures in the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic. And overall, some bigger climate factors. We're going to expect weaker tropical Atlantic trade winds and an enhanced West African monsoon, which the West African monsoon is what generates the African easterly waves. And that's also which generates lots of our tropical waves, and then they develop into cyclones at times.
Now, when the NOAA is predicting the hurricane season, is that like a date circled on the calendar for the Bermuda Weather Service, or do you guys look forward to something?
Well, NOAA's prediction is one of several, and actually some of the earliest ones do come out in March, and they're constantly updated. So we just generally, starting mid-March or so, just kind of look at, there's a few websites that collect all of the predictions together. So we just look at that, keep ourselves updated, and keep going.
Right. I think one of them is like the University of Colorado or somewhere from Colorado is one of
Yeah,
them.
Colorado State's one of the main ones.
Yeah. So is there much difference between what each of the major forecasters are predicting?
Not usually, no. They're generally looking at the same climatological factors. Sometimes the numbers are, they have a little bit of a narrower range, or maybe they'll just do single numbers, but they all generally agree with each other.
Now, last year, it seemed like Bermuda got off fairly easy. What was the biggest storm that we worried about in 2021 because it's so unrememberable?
I know, right? Well, there's 2 hurricanes that were of note. Then they both were potential threats to Bermuda, meaning they came within 400 nautical miles of the area. We had first Hurricane Larry, which was 140 nautical miles to the east on the 9th of September as a Category 1. It had weakened from a Category 3 at its strongest. And really, it just gave the island and marine area marginal tropical storm force winds. But what was a bit more notable was that there was a lot of storm surge that did some damage, especially around the eastern end of the runway. I don't know if people remember, but the road to Clearwater Beach was completely washed out.
Yeah, there was all the boulders and stuff that was on it, right?
Yes, lots of boulders. Now, the other hurricane, which for us at the Weather Service is a bit more notable, was Hurricane Sam. Now, that passed 200 nautical miles to the east at the beginning of October, so kind of like the 1st to the 2nd of October, but it passed as a Category 4. Now, this also gave the island and marine area marginal tropical storm force winds, and it gave us some significant swells as well that impacted our reefs and coastline. However, Sam, as a Category 4, was the strongest hurricane to approach within 200 nautical miles of Bermuda in the historical record. So we've been hit by a strong Category 3, but we've never, within living memory, been hit by a Category 4. And last year, Hurricane Sam passed on by, maintaining its Category 4 strength. So that's definitely something that made us sit up and take notice.
Right. Now, what should residents be doing now? Hurricane season officially starts tomorrow. But what should residents be doing now to prepare for hurricane season?
Well, as you mentioned the lovely weather earlier, it is a bit hard to think about any kind of preparations for tropical storms or hurricanes. But really, we're doing a lot of tips and tricks this week on our Facebook page. We have Hurricane Preparedness Week going on, so please check that out. The EMO, Emergency Measures Organization, also has lots of information. But just basically review your yards, look at your trees and vegetation, look at your structures, check your emergency kits, check your insurance plans, all of that normal good stuff. Do it now while the weather's good, and also make a plan. So by the time we have a watch or warning, hopefully not, but obviously we can never guarantee that. You know, once we see a watch or a warning, then you can follow your plan step by step, and you're not running around trying to do anything last minute. So really, definitely take advantage of the decent high pressure that's been holding over the area for these past several days.
I guess one of the things that's always a concern is like, we go a few years without a hurricane hitting us, a major hurricane hitting us, and then we get a little bit complacent about making sure everything we know that we should do, we do.
Absolutely. And it's really hard when things have been a little bit easier. You know, it's hard to get that momentum back. But it's just one of the many things that you kind of got to do as an adult.
Right. Now, I mentioned earlier, hurricane season officially is supposed to start on June 1st, but we possibly could have the first hurricane of the season tomorrow or the next day, and it's kind of an unusual one because Hurricane Agatha, which is a Pacific storm named, crossed Mexico, but it looks like it might cross all the way over into the Caribbean and form again with a new name.
Yes, Hurricane Agatha was a Category 2 hurricane that made impact on Mexico last night. It brought a lot of rainfall to the areas, and it was actually one of the earliest, strongest hurricanes to impact Mexico on record. There's already some existing low pressure that's over the Yucatan Peninsula and kind of around Belize area, and the remnants of Agatha are going to combine with that. NHC has a 30% chance that it'll develop into some sort of tropical depression within the next couple of days, but then it's up to, let's check, 60% that it's going to become a tropical depression within the next 5 days. So we do expect to see at least tropical depression form. And then Alex is the very first name of the list for this season for the Atlantic. So yeah, we may well be seeing Alex shortly by the end of the week.
When you said 60%, does that mean like 60% chance of it becoming a hurricane or tropical storm, or is that 60% refer to something else?
Developing into a tropical system.
Okay.
So instead of like, it's kind of hard to say, but instead of just a regular old low that's a little bit easier to forecast and predict, tropical cyclones do have their a little bit of their own mechanics that make the models have a lot more difficulty predicting them. So when we think that something's going to become tropical, that means we need to worry about it a lot more. Right. And then Noaa also studying all of the systems, they do need to put a percentage, because that's how they do their forecast on this chance of becoming tropical versus staying a regular low pressure system.
Right. Now, sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's all right. I was just acquiring tropical characteristics, which is very important for any of these to be named.
Now, part of the thing is, like, I know when this bears repeating, when they're predicting a hurricane path, generally the one that we see is what? Because there's how many different kinds of major hurricane predictions for the past when one is started? So I think there's like 17 or 21 different models for.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're getting at. Yes, the spaghetti models. Yes. There are several operational models that the Hurricane Center run, and that's just with the U.S. There's other centers that run their own models as well, and they have ensemble models. So there's a lot of different things to look at. Almost too much data at times.
Right. I learned something new tonight. They're called a spaghetti model. Before, and then they're like this way and that way, and
Yep, the further out in time it goes, the more it looks like spaghetti instead of nice, neat little orderly lines that all agree with each other.
So when we get prediction, um, they combine all the models together and predict sort of like a medium, or how does that work?
So there's preferred models that usually perform well versus other models that might just follow straight climate data. And then there's some experimental models. So what the Hurricane Center and indeed, other places that do these predictions do is they just assign different weights to the models that they're looking at and using. So the ones that are most reliable and most trusted are weighted a bit heavier than some of the others.
Okay. Now, Michelle, is there anything that you wanted to add um, about hurricane season? Anything that maybe us amateur hurricane watchers slash forecasters uh, would benefit from knowing?
Well, we always have to say, regardless of how active a season prediction is, it only takes one cyclone to make a busy season for Bermuda. So we can't become complacent, and we've just got to keep on our toes and make sure all of our preparations are in hand. And now, like I said earlier, there are a lot of models out there, a lot of data is available to everybody to look at. But we have to remember that tropical cyclones are hard to predict. So we always take our official guidance from the National Hurricane Center. And just because one model might be bringing a powerful storm over Bermuda in 10 days or so, that doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to be correct, because there's always a change every model run.
Okay. Well, we thank you for being on tonight and talking to our audience a little bit about this season. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. On behalf of Burn News, we want to thank our listeners tonight and hoping that you have a very beautiful evening.